What up, High and Wide fam and listeners on 102.9 The Game? Welcome back to another edition of Midnight Misconduct. I think this is the second show in a row we have one of the co-hosts sliding on as I'm starting the intro video. So, Paul, welcome. Glad you made it on.
Yeah, me too. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, you too, man. So me and Derek were talking a little bit beforehand. We were going to lead in with the Sean Walker rumors. Flyers discussing re-signing him. We've been talking Walker a lot on this show lately as far as trade rumors go. But, Paul, what are your initial thoughts on the Flyers potentially re-signing Walker?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to have revved up the fan base a little bit. I think I've said it before, but I think there's a way it makes sense to re-sign Walker. It probably a lot of things need to happen for that to happen. I think Ristolainen being moved is one of the only ways that it makes any sense to keep Walker. I mean, they have 8 guys up in the NHL right now. Hopefully, Andre and Addard are close. Then you have Bonk coming in a couple of years. I think if they're able to move Ristolainen, I wouldn't be opposed to signing Walker, but at the same time, I would want it to be like a 2-year deal. Anything more than that, I don't really see being a great fit. Having said all that, I think Ristolainen being moved is more of an off-season type deal. So I feel like you're going to get to the deadline. He's going to still be here. So I would want to move Walker at that point, assuming they can get at least a second-round pick. But it depends. There's a lot of things that go into it.
Derek, overall, your thoughts on Walker? The number range I was seeing was Flyers were thinking 4.5 salary. Mm-hmm. Walker's camp was in the 5.5. But your overall thoughts on him?
5.5 is too high for me. I like the guy. I think he brings what the Flyers are looking for in a defenseman at this point in time. And, I think he'd be a great compliment to, our somewhat higher end talent on the blue line. However, the numbers have to work out. The term, like Paul had mentioned, 2 years, like, okay, I'd be cool with that. Is this camp willing to settle for a 2-year deal? I don't know. I'd have to say probably not. But at the same rate, it's depending upon where he wants to be. Like, this team has taken steps in the right direction. If he wants to be a part of something from the ground up, there's a sense of pride to that. I can appreciate that, and certainly, look forward to something like that. But again, I think a lot of it's posturing, in my opinion. You see reports like this come out every single year, in terms of players that are technically available at the trade deadline. And we're right around that time. I think that reports are coming out so that way, some team might be dumb enough to fall for it and say, oh, they really want to keep him. It's going to take a lot to get him. Like, I think it still will take a lot. I could definitely see a first-round pick at play for this. I could see Briere even saying, I think we're going to keep him, and if they keep him, awesome. They're in a good position to keep him, or that they trade him. Either way, it doesn't matter, So I'm not putting a ton of stock into these rumors in terms of whether they want to re-sign him or trade him. The numbers, the term, in terms of like an extension, like I'll put a little bit of stock into. I just hope that if they do re-sign him, it's towards the 4.5 as opposed to the 5.5.
I mean, I think from Walker's perspective, and I don't know much about his contract history, but if this is considered one of his best seasons, he's in his late 20s. This is probably his last shot at a big contract. So I would assume him and his agent are talking like, hey, man, we got to maximize the value wherever we can. If being in Philadelphia and winning is what means the most to you, and you think you can win here, that's fine. We'll have to take a discount. But if you're ready to cash in and get paid, like, we may need to ride this out to unrestricted free agency. So I feel like that's part of where the conversation comes in. Because, again, this is a business. As much as we love watching these players talk about it, but sometimes we'll talk about generational wealth for people. This is family-changing money right here. So if signing a 5-year deal at $5.5 million per sounds a lot better than signing a 2-year deal at $4 million per, if that's got to be playing a role in Walker's thought process right there. And I wouldn't judge the guy at all for thinking that way. That's a lot of money to have to leave off the table when you're a 29-year-old and you're thinking about your wife, your kids, your kids' kids.
100%. I mean, you got the security of a 5-year deal where you're going to get paid $5 million per year, as opposed to only a 2-year deal and you're getting paid 4. Like, yeah, I mean, at that point in time, yeah, 4 million versus 5 million, you could say, you know, is there that much of a difference in these guys' minds? In my mind, Christ, yeah, there is. So, you know, that's definitely going to play a factor. And in terms of location too, if it's a team like Columbus that's offering it up, maybe you don't want to go there. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to take your family there. If it's, you know, if he's settled down in Philly and he likes it, fantastic. You know, you want to keep him around. You don't want to play that card too much if you're Briere. Like, well, you know, you're already settled in here. You like it, because he's going to spurn you and just be like, yeah, well, you know, you see how quickly I settled here when I got traded. I can just as easily quickly get settled somewhere else, you know?
Yeah, I also think Tortorella and this Flyer system has really helped him shine, help him break out in a way. I think like Tortorella obviously likes activating the defenseman and having them jump in, and Walker's skating ability has, I think it's also the place how he likes to play has let him shine like that. Maybe that would help him want to stay here and be in a comfortable situation he's comfortable with. But ultimately, I tend to agree with you that he's probably not going to take the 2-year deal. He's 29 years old. He may have another contract after this, but this is definitely the best opportunity to cash in on the biggest contract. And you would imagine if the market is what they say it is for the trade value, there's going to be some teams lining up in free agency too. So I mean, good for him. He's really boosted his stock this year. He wasn't a bad defenseman before, but definitely wasn't viewed as a $4 to $5 million defenseman. And yeah, it'll be tough to keep him with the Flyer situation, and probably isn't the right move unless some other variables happen.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, so you specifically mentioned that you'd only want to see the Walker extension if Ristolainen was moved. So if you knew for a fact Ristolainen was moved in the offseason, would you still be okay with extending Walker and keeping him through the deadline? Or is it one or the other at the deadline for you?
Well, I guess if I know that for sure he's going to be moved, then I guess I'd be okay with it. But I don't know that possibility exists. I mean, maybe they have a conversation like that with the team and have.
Well, I mean, we're going to get to see playoff Risto this year, and that's where he pays off. So we're going to see playoff Risto.
True.
He's going to raise his stock, and then his offseason value is going to be up through the roof. That's what I'm thinking.
Or they won't want to trade him after that, after what they see.
Oh, then we got both. Then we got Walker and Risto. Is what you're saying?
Stuck with both, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it's guaranteed he's moved, I don't hate it. But if they are, I don't want to say stuck, because Ristolainen hasn't been bad this year or last year. But if they are guaranteed to have Ristolainen through the deadline and throughout the rest of the season, I think they should probably try to cash in and get what they can for Walker. And I mean, best case scenario, this almost never happens, but best case scenario, if they really wanted to, they could always try to make an offer for him in the offseason again.
Now, I'm going to throw this to both of you guys. If they don't trade Ristolainen and they re-sign Walker, what does that tell you how they view this current team going forward? Do they view him as a playoff contender right now, Stanley Cup contender right now? Do they think the rebuild is ahead of schedule? So they don't move Risto, they extend Walker through the deadline, neither one of them goes. Derek, what do you think that front office is saying if that's the moves they make at the deadline?
I think that's a vote of confidence in the team that they have. Now, I think it's an ill-advised move. I'm not going to lie. However, they may know something about the timeline specifically for Bonk, depending on the term of the contract for Walker. Like if Paul said, if it's a 2-year deal, that's enough time, I think, in my mind, where at the very least Bonk's knocking on the door. Might take another year or two, but at that rate, you've got a guy like Adard, Andre, that could easily step into that role as well. And I think that plays into it as well. I think Andre, obviously, and Adard are going to be a little bit closer than Bonk is right now. So maybe that 2 years is technically a bridge deal in every sense of the term. A bridge until Andre's ready, a bridge until Adard's ready, a bridge to see if he can continue the style of play that he exemplified his first year here in Philly. So those moves paired together, though, I think they're a vote of confidence in the team. But I think at this stage in Briere's tenure as GM, I'm not sure if that's the smartest thing to do. That's just coming from a fan. The perception of that could be pretty rough.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's obvious that they don't view the team as a cup contender, regardless of what they do here. I think they've been pretty open about how they still want to not necessarily sell, but they're still open to moving people. They don't want to change their long-term plans. I think Tortorella's said a couple of times that they're a long ways off, despite being in the middle of win streaks or a good season. So I think they definitely don't view him as a cup contender. But I would imagine if they don't move, if they re-signed Walker and didn't move Ristolainen, then yeah, they didn't get. I think it would probably be indicative that they didn't get an offer that they love for Walker, and they'd rather run this team out however long you can get him, do a playoff run, rather than moving him for nothing almost, or a third or fourth round pick. And again, maybe there's more going into the off season, that like a Ristolainen trade that we don't know. You have to see the full plan through the off season. So it's hard to, I'm sure it won't stop fans, but it's hard to make a full determination after the trade deadline of what the plan is.
It's easy for some of them to tell everybody, their hatred for Briere even before the deadline.
I mean, I'll be honest though, re-signing Walker and keeping Ristolainen, I don't think that necessarily would change my opinion on the rebuild in general. It just means they want to keep fielding a competent NHL team. There's nothing wrong with your defensive prospects getting more playing time in the AHL or the minor leagues where they're at right now. So they just want to keep Walker and Risto around for the reason of they think they're the best players right now for the NHL level team. I'm okay with that. Like, hey, Walker's here for 2-3 more years. Ristolainen's here for a couple more years, or maybe we move him in 18 months. But I don't think it's I don't think it's any kind of indictment on the prospects we have, or that it's adjusting the rebuild. I think it does say, hey, we're going to try to compete this year, but it doesn't change anything as far as the development plan goes or what the timeline is. It's just, hey, let the rest of the prospects keep playing at the leagues they're in. Let them get those big minutes. Let them play where they're at. They're on the ice more instead of playing, third pairing minutes up in the NHL.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I think you're mostly right. It's just the fact of like Walker is a little bit of found money, and if you want to keep bolstering this team for 2 or 3 years down the road when Mitchkov gets here and Bonk and some of these other young guys keep developing, can you cash in on that kind of found money and get even more future assets that you can kind of cash in on again around that time?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Mitchkov. So, Derek, you sent something in our group chat a couple days ago. So I'm going to throw it to you, open thread, but explain the comparison you were talking about and the dialogue you wanted to bring up.
Right. So on Twitter earlier this week, there was a gentleman from Habs Unfiltered that wanted to make a comparison between Juraj Slafkovsky and Matvei Michkov. I'm trying to see if I can pull this up. Gentleman's name is Trage Wilson. It was from a couple days ago, so it might take a little bit. I'm not even sure if it's worth pulling up, but there's comparisons made saying, Slafkovsky's on the first line. I think there was some other stuff being said. Was it Rachel Doering was mentioning? I believe Paul's nodding his head. A lot of dialogue about it. And I mean, it's hard enough comparing prospects, whether, same draft year, different draft year, but like taking a number one pick in a really not so strong draft, in my opinion, and then comparing him to a guy like Michkov, who entering the draft, Russian problems aside, was viewed as potentially even better than Bedard by some. I think it's foolish. I look at it this way too, like just from my point of view, and again, might just be, my orange shaded glasses or whatever, but you put those guys on the ice at the same time, I think 9 out of 10 times Michkov's going to dog walk the guy. Not an indictment on Slafkovsky being a bad player, just I think more so Michkov is just supremely talented.
Yeah, I mean, I think Slavkovsky's really stepped it up the last 20 or so games. I think it's been. I think he deserves credit for that. I wasn't necessarily calling him a bust, but he was never. I think in that draft I had him ranked like 6 or 7 in his class. So I wasn't the highest on him, but figured he'd be better than he was last year. But I think he deserves credit for the way he's played lately. But at the same time, I think from what I see, at least on Twitter, most Montreal fans are coming at Michkov from like a bad faith argument, and just trying to disparage him in any way they can. Like the comparison doesn't really make much sense. He's in his second year. He was always more physically ready for the NHL than Michkov when he was drafted. They're in different leagues. It's complete. It doesn't make much sense to compare him. And yeah, I don't think if it was in the draft year or now, nobody would be taking Michkov or Slavkovsky over Michkov. And I think Slavkovsky is on his way. Looks like a very good player already. But Michkov's the better talent for sure.
Mm-hmm. The way the Montreal fans cope, I'll tell you what. Yeah, they were upset because they took Reinbacher over Michkov, and now it's turned to Slavkovsky because it's like, oh well, the Reinbacher argument didn't get it done. I guess we'll throw up our number 1 overall pick against Michkov, and that'll show them. You know, it just all sounds ridiculous to me that they're that hung up on a guy that they didn't draft. They literally have no ties to him, and they're gonna keep just pounding and pounding and pounding. It's like, dude. You're the old man yelling at the sky at this point. Like it's funny at this point to a lot of us at right now.
I just overall in general think that most ice hockey fans from Canada just have a hard time accepting the fact that the majority of the NHLs in the United States, because that's where like the money is and the TV markets are. And I just sense bitterness from every argument, no matter what. Regardless of what the topic is, whether it's expansion, relocation, a rule change, realignment, prospects, players, there's just a ton of bitterness all the time, and probably rightfully so. I guess they have a fair point, from a heritage standpoint, but like at some point you got to accept reality, guys. Like, come on.
Mm-hmm. So I had the tweet pulled up. I forgot that I quoted it from the Pond Street Bullies account, so it's easier to pull up. This guy goes, is the Canadians' Slavkovsky better than Matvei Michkov? Let's look at the numbers of both 19-year-olds. Slavkovsky this year, 12 goals, 29 points in 54 games in the NHL. Michkov with 16 goals, 37 points in 43 games played. Then he says Slavkovsky has 8 less points in 11 more games, but in a much superior league. Both players play in an offensively challenged team. Slavkovsky makes his line and line mates better. Michkov needs someone to feed him the puck and push the play. I see Paul's face right now. Like,
I mean, if you want to, you can like do the box score points versus games thing, and obviously the NHL is a better league than the KHL, but you're just making up things when you say Michkov like needs players to get him the puck to be successful. He's every bit as much a creator as he is finishing off the chances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that last part got me about like, because I'll look at points and I'm not one of those guys that is the end all be all, but like even in a less superior league, according to the gentleman there, which I can somewhat agree to, he's creating so much in regards to his play. Like it astounds me that you can overlook that and be blinded by your fandom, especially given the circumstances, because again, I'll reiterate, like these guys have no ties to Michkov at all, aside from missing out on him because they decided to take a defenseman. It just astounds me the pettiness of it all with some of these people that are just like, oh, I got to make myself feel better, so I'm just gonna piss and moan, about Michkov.
Yeah. Were Flyers fans ever this way with Cole Caulfield? I didn't know there were a couple people.
Yeah, there was a little bit.
A little.
Did it ever get this bad?
I don't think so.
I don't think it got that bad. No, there was definitely a little bit though with the Caulfield stuff.
I feel like too, and maybe I can't speak to like the Canadian fan base, but like a lot of what Flyers Twitter does is like in jest and just like us being, jackasses.
Well, most of the time, Flyers Twitter is fighting each other.
That's true.
Yeah.
We spend too much effort fighting each other as opposed to fighting other fan bases.
You don't have time to fight other fan bases. We're at each other's throats the whole time.
Right. It's never a boring day on Flyers Twitter. Like that's a fact.
I also feel like a lot of people with Caulfield, at least, were like they'd see a Caulfield thing and get mad at the Flyers, not necessarily wishing that Cole Caulfield would fail himself.
Yeah, that's fair. There was a lot of front office hate for the Flyers for a long time. So I think you're right. Like when it was like, oh, Caulfield's doing this, it was more like, F the Flyers front office than it was so much go after Caulfield himself.
I'm sure there were a couple, but it feels like a full support effort on hating Michkov out in Montreal.
Oh yeah, the bayonets are out.
Led by Grant McCagg.
He's a hack. Jim just messaged us in the High and Wide group chat, and he goes, "When the bleep did this happen?" And it's Monahan scoring for Winnipeg, and he forgot Monahan got traded to Winnipeg.
He had a hat trick last night.
He had a hat trick. Oh my goodness! See, I got to follow the NHL more, like aside from just the Flyers.
Yeah, honestly. So, Paul, you slid in right as we were starting. But I was telling Derek, I was like so unprepared for the show because I had so much like business stuff going on. I was like, I have like no NHL or hockey content ready. I was like, so what do you want to do? So that's why we start with Walker, and he brought this up. But the one thing I definitely can bring in that overlaps with the business and what we're talking about right now is the haters, right? There's another cheesesteak business in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I never mention them. I don't bring them up. I just post my stuff. But I live rent-free in their fanboys' heads because every other post I make, somebody is commenting on my stuff about how X, Y, and Z business is better than me, and that's who they're going with. So I get the delusional fan base, and for whatever reason, Lincoln thinks they're a royalty of the cheesesteak fan base. They think they own something out here.
Are they Philly-based cheesesteak place?
Nope, based right out here in Lincoln. Nope,
straight out of Lincoln.
Yeah, they get prepackaged.
What's their sell?
Yeah, they get like prepackaged like Steakums Philly meat. That's what they use. They use that prepackaged seasoning, like just regular. They're not even all that. Like they're really not that great. And I never mention them at all on my page. But their fan club will chime in every other post I make.
Sounds like a certain sect of Flyers Twitter.
Yeah. Like I said, that's how I can relate it.
I'll have to jump on Yelp after this call here.
Yeah.
Speaking of Yelp, I got a Yelp review and Yelp contacted me. I can claim the review and actually be listed on Yelp now. I got that phone call today.
There you go, man.
Yeah,
way to go. Congrats.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good week for the Delco Dave Steaks. Welcome to the cheesesteak segment of this show, by the way, people.
Look, if you got haters, you're getting recognized,
Yeah, that's how I feel. We got nominated for a local radio station does a Munch Madness tournament, which is their version of March Madness, but it's local restaurants. We slid in out of 315 eligible restaurants. We made the top 64 for the bracket. We were the 20th restaurant in. Also got nominated for 3 Lincoln's Best Choice Awards.
Nice.
Food truck pop-up, under the radar business, and locally owned business. So no, pretty big week for the Delco Dave Steaks business side of things.
So that's not even like
Very nice.
Don't even need to humble brag. Like you need to shout that from the mountaintop, man. That's awesome.
I'm gonna be reaching out to the crew when I need votes though. Voting's about to start in the next week or so. I'm reaching out to the crew.
We're there. I'll have me doing it, my wife, my mom, my dad, my sisters, everybody.
I appreciate it. I'll get it out to you guys, man. It's been a good run. But no, back to the hockey stuff. Derek, who'd you say Bobrovsky went after? We were talking goalie fight. Let's get into the goalie fight segment of what we were going to talk about.
So when Dave and I were talking here before the show, surfing Twitter as I typically do because something pops up, we like to talk about it. It's fun. There's a scrum in front of the Florida net in the Florida Ottawa game here tonight, being Tuesday night, and Bobrovsky actually went after Brady Tkachuk. And Dave, you said you were a goalie, so you modeled your game after who you said?
Eddie Belfour, the Eagle, baby.
So you're very familiar with the chippiness that comes along with being a goalie sometimes. But I was telling you just from like my standpoint, I love that stuff. Like I love seeing a goalie fight back because I mean, think about the times you watch Sean Avery wave his stick in front of Brodeur, you know? Like I want the goalie to fight back. I want to see him give an elbow to the small of someone's back. Like I want to see chops. I want to see slashes. Like I want to see the viciousness and the nastiness because you see it with forwards, you see it with defensemen. Rarely do you see it with goalies. Like some of them toe a line. Binnington obviously crosses that line like every other game at this point. So like that's scumbaggery. But like at the same rate, you can be a nasty goalie without being like a real POS, I guess, if that makes any sense.
I mean, Binnington, I think, is taking it too far. Like he's almost made it his whole personality. But
yeah,
like
he's embraced the heel role, you know?
Yeah, like almost over the top too much. But no, I definitely like goalies have become almost like the accountants of like the NHL world. Like, you know what I mean? Just run the numbers, know what your angle's supposed to be in good position, control the rebounds, don't say anything. Like that's what you're
just
like
machines.
That's exactly what goalies have become. So, I love personality in general in all sports. But I would definitely love to see some more attitude from the goalies. Paul?
Even if you have those Binnington guys that are crossing the edge, like it's still good for the game in my opinion. It's still fun to have hate. Like I think Jim said it before. We've probably all said it would bring hate back in the game. Games are just more fun when guys are hating other guys on the other team and the fans are then angry at the other fans. It's just more passion involved. It's just better entertainment.
Yeah, it's a better product. I mean, Derek referenced me talking about I was a goalie growing up. And Ed Belfour was the guy I modeled my game after. So I never did like the nut shot that Belfour would do, but he was famous for doing those things when people got too close to his crease, shots at the back of the ankles, the stick between the legs. Yeah. The one I got really good at was that, I'd make sure I was in like, my standard position. But if I knew somebody was getting in my crease, I'd have that stick ready to go, that blade angled right underneath their skate blade. And as soon as that puck moved, I'd turn with a huge like ferocity there, take them down, they pop up, slash me, we go on the power play
penalty.
Yeah, that was my move every time.
I feel like it takes a lot for a goalie to get called, so they should be pushing the envelope because anything they do, you're going to get retaliation, and they're getting called every time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Have a goalie take liberties. Like I can't tell you how many times, and again, replicating back to what I said to Dave before the show started, like can't tell you how many times I've seen screens being set in front of whether it's Hart, Urson, Sandstrom, Peterson, it doesn't matter, Flyers in general, that I'm just like, man, all it takes is just, early in the game, giving somebody one right in the back, letting them know, and no one's going to mess with you. Now, they still might, but, that's when you give them another shot to remind them and say, hey, I'm not messing around. If you try to screen me again, I'm going to just hack the living hell out of you.
Now, is it us over-romanticizing the past a little bit? Or were the goalies really more emotional back in the day? Because I think Hextall, Wah, like Belfour, like I mentioned, like there was guys that really did. Grant Fuhr had his moments. Like there was guys that had their moments. And maybe I feel like we're not giving enough credit to today's generation of goalies, or are they really that much more docile and just locked in tacticians?
I think a little bit of like everybody is a little more docile. The game has changed in general. It's less hitting and fighting and physicality. But other than that, yeah, I wonder if it's something about just trying to be so locked in on your angles and your shots that you're not worrying about the extracurricular stuff. All these guys are so trained, and you get mental coaches and goalie coaches in the off season, and I feel like I feel like they're so locked in that could be part of it as well. They don't want to engage in that other stuff to take their focus off of the puck. Just a guess, though.
I think a lot of people focus more on their game now as opposed to the emotions attached to it. Not saying that's good or bad. Like with any sport, there's emotions. I mean, Christ, I ran track in high school, and there were emotions in track because it's still a sport, but it's not emotions when it comes to hockey or football or even baseball for that matter. they're rightfully focusing on their angles. They're rightfully focusing on playing the game the right way to mitigate the opposition's chance of scoring, which is great. And it's also indicative of the past generations where, the best save percentage in the league any given year was in the mid to low, 80% because there were some extracurriculars going on, which I'm totally okay with. But yeah, like I'm just as much a fan of a flashy highlight reel save as I am of a goalie chasing somebody out of the crease to try to hack them. Like I want to see them both. I want to see a goalie that's capable of doing both. And I think that's the best that a goalie can be for the game.
The Hextall YouTube videos are some of the best videos on YouTube. Him just chasing people down, making occasion. His highlight reel is like 7 saves and like 25 hits.
It should be set to like Benny Hill music.
And 2 goals scored, right?
And 2 goals, yeah. And a couple gloves thrown.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I want to see when it comes to like penalty shots and shootouts. I want to see if a goalie like just makes the first move and is completely left out to dry. I want to see him throw a blocker to see if he could like stop the puck. I feel like that should be legal. Yeah, exactly. Pull a Hartnell, throw the glove. Like I want to see that be a part of the game because it's like, hey, if you had the dexterity and the hand-eye to get that blocker off your hand and block a shot that's about to go in, you deserve that save.
Wait, here's how we fix the shootout. Ready?
Get rid of it.
Cap it at 5 rounds of shootout, and then it's goalie on goalie, post or crossbar to win. 1-on-1, somebody has to post or crossbar. That's how we solve the shootout right there.
All right.
A goalie shootout attempt would be great hockey.
Does the goalie get to use a normal stick, or does he have to use his own?
No. Blocker glove. You got yeah.
All right.
You're in full pads, full contact. Somebody has to hit a post or a crossbar.
Huh. That'd be entertaining. I'd enjoy that.
I feel like the NHL should just start throwing our ideas out there in like a preseason. Like, all right, this game we'll try this one. This game we'll try this one. But I feel like people would love them.
It's like pasta.
Yeah, let it run in the AHL for a little bit.
Yeah. Also, I think one of the big things when it comes to emotion in the game, I think fans appreciate emotion and goalies going after somebody or players, fighting stuff because it's almost relatable to the players. Like you want to forget that it's a bunch of millionaires playing a game that a bunch of billionaires are paying for that we're paying hundreds of dollars to watch. When somebody gets invested the way you get invested, it's relatable. You know what I mean? You feel like they care too. So I think that's a big thing when we're talking about seeing goalies, go after somebody or, players go after. So we just want to know they care too. I think that's a big thing for when it comes to the fan base.
Yeah. Yeah. That's especially true in Philly, I think, or you really want to see the players care as much as we care.
Oh yeah, any blue collar town. I mean, any town that the working class, they want to know that they're not paying to see just a bunch of millionaires prancing around and trying to score goals. They want hard nosed workers that are going to grind and embody the spirit of the city, which kind of is what Philadelphia has been built on ever since their inception.
Yeah, I think it's why, you hear when it comes to the Phillies, not running it out to first base. That's a big thing. Like when guys take it off, they know it's an out, so they take it off. You want to see them leg it out. That's always a big thing when it comes to the Phillies roster.
Who does run it out? These guys.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to say. I was going to say, we talk about blue-collar towns and respecting the work. It's why, the Cowboys players never have to put in the extra work or actually work hard because, that's a celebrity town right there.
I know I've said this on Pod Street, but I feel like it needs to be said on the record here. I am not a Cowboys fan that comes out every single year saying that this is our year. I expected the Green Bay loss. I expect losses in playoffs, no matter who we're playing, because they choke in the playoffs. I'm a realist. So I want everyone, before I get a barrage of crap for it, to understand that I'm not one of those D-bags that's like, this is our year, we them boys. No, I'm like, we're still the team that can't make it in the playoffs. I get that. All right. So let's get that out of the way.
I love it, man. What about 60 million a year for Dak? You down for
No.
60 million a year?
God, no. Go with Cooper Rush at that point. I don't want any part of a Dak Prescott $60 million contract. I like that. I do. I like Dak Prescott. But what has he done to earn $60 million? That's ridiculous. And I get it, quarterback market's the quarterback market, whatever. Like, I don't care. If I'm Jerry Jones, which God, I'd never want to be.
I take his money. I take Jerry Jones'
100%.
money in a second.
I wouldn't take the prejudice and all the crap that comes along with it.
I would take that Jerry Jones money in a second.
Right. Just the money.
Yeah.
But I'd look at that and be like, what have you done for me in the playoffs when it counts? And the answer is nothing. You've gotten maybe one or two wins in the playoffs over your entire career. No, man, it's not cut it for me. Like, if I'll tell him right then and there. I'll be, listen, you can take 30 for a year, prove it to me, win, get to the NFC Championship game. Great. Then we'll look at paying you around that, not 60, but around that. If you can't get me where I need to go, guess what? Cooper Rush plugged in for you 2 years ago, and he did pretty good. I think I'm going to give him a shot. Put the pressure on him.
Would you rather sign Sean Walker to a long-term deal worth $5 million or Dakota Prescott for a big deal?
Oh, and you went Dakota. I love it. You went Dakota. I love that.
Ooh, Rain.
Paul, I gotta send you this video. There's a video of me yelling at the TV during the Eagles-Cowboys game. I'm just like, Dakota's a girl's name. Like, my wife has this video of me just screaming at the TV.
Oh, I gotta see it now. Man. I'll be honest. I'd rather the Prescott contract, and
yeah,
it's
I
because
that's the right answer.
Well, yeah, because you're not a Cowboys fan either, Paul.
Shut up. No, but I try to be.
Me and Paul are like, yeah, absolutely.
Like, yeah, 30 years.
Bring back Eli.
60 million by 10. Do
it. I love all my teams, and I support them equally for the most part. But my expectations for the Flyers are higher, given their situation, than I have for the Cowboys right now. So
that's sexy. I like to hear you say that. That's sexy talking like that.
Right. Like, yeah. And everybody's always breaking my balls about it. Like, how do you root for the Cowboys? Like, dude, I grew up that way. Like, I had no chance, but I blame my parents. Love them dearly, but I blame them.
Flyers, Cowboys, and Derek's balls. This is sexy. This is sexy talk right now. This is.
Ooh,
I like what we're going with.
Keep the crossover. What you were saying, all the rule changes you want. I think Midnight Misconduct should just make the XFL version of hockey. Just have our own crazy rules.
The XHL.
Yeah.
There you go.
There it is.
Absolutely. I love it.
Mandatory 3 fights a period. No shootouts.
One goalie.
You just have one goalie. You have a fight to determine the winner of the game if it gets past the 3-on-3, and you send out your toughest goon. Your Doug Glatt, if you will.
Yeah, this is awesome. Yeah, that's another closing segment. That's a new closing segment. We're gonna come up. The XHL is a new closing segment now.
Proposed rule changes for the XHL.
Yeah, we'll find a way to apply it.
Maybe we can get Dwayne Johnson here to fund that for us, since the XFL didn't bode too well.
Wait, but honestly, one of the reasons I brought up the Dak Prescott contract was though, $60 million a year. What is the top 5 average annual salaries in the NHL? Do they total $60 million a year? Take the 5.
No, I don't think so.
Take the top 5 highest.
The highest is what, like 12?
No, I think it's more than that.
Is it?
But yeah,
let's
just
look
think
this
about
up.
like major sports leagues that all sports leagues are created equally, but some sports leagues are created more equally. Like the NFL is so far and above the rest of the sports world, it's crazy.
The NHL is also so far below those major 3 and big contracts.
Yeah. I mean, MLB is really good too. Honestly, MLB probably rivals NFL on their contracts.
Yeah, I mean the top NBA contracts are pretty insane too, but MLB contracts are. I mean, what did Ohtani get, like $600 million?
Yeah, and you have middle relievers that make like $7 million a year.
Yeah.
So interesting fact here: the top contracts in the league right now: Nathan McKinnon at 12.6, Connor McDavid at 12.5, Artemi Panarin at 11.642, Austin Matthews at 11.64, and then Erik Karlsson rounds out the top 5 at 11.5. Do you know what that all equates to?
I'm going under 60, just off the top. It's close.
It would be right around, it'd be right around
9.8.
59.8.
So it is $200,000 shy of what a proposed Dakota Rain Prescott contract looks like.
That's so wild.
He would be making more than the top 5, arguably the top 5 players. Well, let's discount Carlson. I'm not going to put him in the top 10 for that.
Yeah, but he earned it. Like, it's not like he wasn't good for years. Like, that's how it goes. Like,
that's a separate topic.
Like,
yeah,
he's still
and I'm passionate. He's not bad, but like, I'm passionate about this. There are contracts out there in the NHL, and that's how sports works. You're getting paid on your past accomplishments, even though right now you're not what you used to be, and you're, quite frankly, you're not good. You know, some players aren't that good, and they're not earning the money that they were signed to. Like that, to me, is the bigger problem. We're not paying players on what we're projecting them to be. We're paying them on past accomplishments, and then it's always like, oh, well, that contract was a bust because now he's putting up, 15 goals a season, and we're paying him $7 million, and it's like, oh, well, what'd you pay him on? What do you expected or what he did? You want
to know the exception that proves the rule on that one? The Wayne Simmons contract for the Flyers. We were getting him grossly underpaid for half a decade. Like that man, he had to leave to go make any real money because of how low we were paying him. He's the exception that proves that rule.
Cannot blame that man one bit for leaving.
Not at all.
That rationale is a part of the undoing of the Phillies in that after 2012. They had all those guys being paid for what they did, and they just weren't it anymore.
You want to know who was great at trying to project it and being ahead of stuff? Joe Banner. When Joe Banner was watching the money, he handed out some bad contracts. But he would also hand out a contract for like Reggie Brown, and it'd be like 3 years for $2 million apiece. And like, why are you paying him that? He's only caught 50 passes in a season, but like he has one good season, and all of a sudden he's due $6 million a year. So like Joe Banner was pretty good at watching the money. He was a good GM as far as managing finances. I'm not saying he's a great judge of talent, but he was good when it came to managing contracts.
Yeah. Well, compared to the Tippett deal, I mean, we're paying him 6.2, if I'm not mistaken. Like, if he continues to progress in the way that we expect him to, that could be an absolute steal of a contract because he could be a top line winger on a team that's contending for cups here in the next 4 or 5 years, whatever it might be. And you're paying the guy $6 million on the top wing. Like that's a fantastic bargain.
Oh yeah. How cool would it be if you bring Giroux back for a playoff run and him and Tippett win one together? Like
we went through this on an episode, didn't we? Wasn't it like the first episode we talked about bringing Giroux back?
I think we touched on it, but
yeah. I mean, I don't think it'll actually happen, but how cool would it be? Man. Plus Jim Jackson at one point said, I don't know if it was on one of our shows or something else, but he said the city might catch on fire if the Flyers win a Stanley Cup with 3 gingers on the top line.
The city might catch on fire if the Flyers win a Stanley Cup with whoever is on the roster.
Oh, I'll be honest. I'm making a drive back. I already told Jess. I said, listen.
Oh my God,
there's a lot of things I'd probably let slide to like go be back in the city for. But if the Flyers are in the Cup and I have a chance to win it, I'm driving back to the city. I'll like. Oh my God, I don't care. I'll be there no matter what.
Yeah, the parade could be Monday morning. Mm-hmm. Parade could be Monday morning, and my installs are going out that same day. I'm just going to say, sorry. Listen, Flyers won the Stanley Cup. Your installs can wait. I'm in Philadelphia all day getting just canned.
I'll see you in a week.
Right? Like I'm gonna need Tuesday to recover too, so you're starting on Wednesday.
I love it.
Oh man. God, that would be the day, man. I dream of that stuff.
Oh my God, yeah. It is pretty crazy how many orange hair players the Flyers acquire. Like they've
always had like throughout, like they've had them for a while. Like it's been a whole like 30 years worth of it.
it's insane. Like, oh, there's another one. He's got orange hair too.
Did any of you, David and I talked about it here, but Paul, did you listen to Nasty Knuckles with Voracek on it?
I actually did today. Yeah, I feel like Voracek's always an entertaining listen, so I was intrigued.
Oh man,
yeah, it was a good show. He
Yeah,
didn't have too many juicy stories, but I like
right.
I always liked Voracek too. I always defended him.
Oh yeah, like I enjoyed the part where he was talking about the him hitting on Kekalainen's wife.
Yeah.
And he didn't get too in depth about it, but like his relationship with Vino, there was some strain there, and I'm like, I wonder how it was with the other veterans on the team when it came to their relationships with Vino, like Giroux, Simmons, even Couturier to an extent. Like, I wonder what those relationships looked like with Vino at the helm there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have to try to find it. He was on a podcast, I want to say in the off season, where he touched on the Vigneault stuff a little more, and like went into depth on how that relationship became strained. And he hates Vigneault. He just like calls him basically a weasel. He's like he's.
Are you sure he wasn't talking about Sealski?
Yeah, not this time. But yeah, he's not a fan of him. He didn't respect him really, the way he tried to control the locker room. And but yeah, I don't think he touched on how the other players felt on it too much. I think he's mentioned, and he mentioned again on this Nasty Knuckles one, how he they played a different style that bubble year until they came in the playoffs, and Vigneault tried to change their style, and he made it sound like all the players were pretty pissed about that.
Rightfully so. Team was playing well.
They were the hottest team in the league.
Yeah, and it changed things up from there. Like, come on,
no sense.
Any veteran coach should know better. That shocks me. I'll be honest.
Yeah. I also thought it was interesting. He would talk about Tortorella for a minute, of meeting him and the way
how
he
tried to duck him or something like that.
Yeah, but he was basically kind of sounded like he would have liked to play for him.
He compared him to Chief.
And I've seen a lot of Flyers fans be like, "Oh, Voracek would have got killed under Torts," and
no, I thought the same. I thought the same about connecting.
It's a weird reputation, to be honest with you. Fans in general think players don't want to play for him, but I think for the most part, the players that have played for him and do like Torts. They go back. They go to bat for him.
Oh yeah.
I also think people are a little wrong on Voracek. I think they act like he doesn't care when. I think he just liked to drink still, like the old school guys a little bit. I don't think that was necessarily him not caring. I think he still gave it his all on the rink and in the locker room and all. He just didn't quite have the
every now and then.
Yeah, it didn't quite have.
Who hasn't been?
Guys.
I used to show up to my floor hockey games and intramurals, half buzzed. So I get it, man. I can sympathize.
When I do 3 shows in a day, you can be damn sure I'm drinking by the 3rd show. Let's be honest.
I mean, I've got a pounder right now, and I'm 2 sips away from being finished. So it's I get it, man. If I could drink during the day at work, oh my God, it'd make it so much better.
Hey, I can drink during the day at work. So one of the only benefits,
rub it in my face.
One of the only benefits of this bar moving out, who I'm renting from right now, the only benefit I have, again, there's some leverage stuff where I might be out of business in 60 days, but in the intermediate, they're not taking any of their beers. They literally told me just to drink it. They're like, whatever's in there, you can just have. So I'm just
handed a gift from God, my friend.
Yeah. So I'll just make cheesesteaks during the lunch rush, sell them out. Then once 1:30 rolls around, I'm like, all right, just stroll on down to the bar.
Beer 30. That was one thing when I worked at a microbrewery here in York. And I enjoyed it so much. The son-in-law of the owner was the brewmaster, and I got in tight with him. And after every shift, it was free. You get a free shift beer. But I eventually ended up being head server. I ended up having the key to lock the place up because the boss would go home to his wife and this and that. He trusted me to lock up, so I would I'd lock up, and there were nights it was just me and the one cook. His name was Steve. Great guy. I love Steve, and he lives right down the street, but I haven't seen him in years because 2 kids. But we would sit on there's a little back patio because it's attached to the back of the Central Market in New York. We would just sit there and drink, and just like shoot the you know what and just have a good time. And at the end of the night, everything's cleaned up, everything's in order. We're not going crazy, emptying half a keg, but like we're having a good time and being responsible about it. And I miss those days, dude. I was so much fun.
Yeah, man. One of my good friends who might be coming in with us on this ownership partnership, she was a manager at a local brewery, and she would just text me. She's like, "Hey, like, were you working tonight?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm cleaning up now, I'm packing up." She goes, "Do you want to come over? Like, I'm locking up. Like, I always like someone to walk me to the car. Like, if you want to come chill for a little bit, like, have a beer or two." So I would just like show up. She let me into the brewery. Everybody else is going, it's just us. We're just hanging out, drinking. Sometimes my wife would come hang out too. Like, you know what I
Oh
mean? Just
yeah.
knock back a couple beers, make sure everybody gets to the car, then we'd all go home, man. No, but those kind of days, like, especially when you're tired and like,
Oh yeah.
like when you put like 9 hours in to make like $27, you're like,
Hmm.
a free beer or two tastes really good right now.
Oh yeah.
Like,
We had one night where we did like a fundraiser, and the lady that did the fundraiser, her daughter showed up with like all of her friends, and like I was waiting on their table, and they were about my age, and I hit it off with the one girl. And later that night, they're circling around Cherry Lane, which is the alley that goes back behind the restaurant. And they come in the shop as I'm like mopping up, and I'm just like, "Hey, I'm sorry, like we're closing down." And I'm like, "But listen, like, I'll meet you out somewhere, if you want to go grab a drink." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, sure." So I go back in. Jeff was the owner, and he looked at me and he's like, "What'd you tell him?" And I'm like, "I told him we're closed." He's like, "No." He's like, "Bring him in. They can have one drink, and that way you're closed. You leave with them." And I'm like, "Good thinking, Jeff."
that's why you own a business, Jeff.
Right.
Thinking
I'm
like
like,
that.
why I'm the employee, you're the employer.
That thinking, yeah, that's great. That's great, Jeff.
Yeah, and I'm
All
like, thank you, Jeff, for a good solid 6 months of fun.
All right, we are winding down, but we had a couple days off, so I'm gonna bring back the soapbox. We've been working out some different end of segment ones. We didn't plan for one today, but we're going soapbox here, and I'm gonna throw it to Paul first. Paul gets to go on the soapbox first tonight, man. So whatever you want to, sports, hockey, life, business, relationships, teach us something.
I got nothing to teach you guys. You guys had it all. The kids, the family. You got business owning. You got more experience than me. But no, I didn't prepare for this, so I don't really have much. But I guess I'll pick up Charlie O'Connor's argument on Twitter and tell fans to relax a little bit and wait for things to play out at least here, even if it's through the off season. I think they deserve a little bit. I understand the last couple of years have been frustrating. I've been as frustrated as anybody, and not having a direction and being bad. But I think they deserve a little credit that they're a fun team to watch this year. The organization is in much better standing than they were. We're excited to watch them again. The vibes are good with Keith Jones, Danny Briere, Dan Hilferty. Val's gone.
Jim's girl, baby.
Yeah, Jim's girl's gone. He's got her to herself now. I think there's enough good there that we can relax a little and just trust the process a little bit and let it play out before we spin our wheels and get all in our head that Danny Briere is going to make this thing turn sideways again. Let it play out a little bit.
So little Aaron Rodgers, RELAX, relax.
Yes, long story short, that is correct.
All right, Dag, over to you, bro.
I'll kind of pick up the baton here that Paul passed along, because that was what I was thinking too, but kind of like a segue from it. Like, everybody's got Twitter at this point. Everybody knows X, whatever. I still call it Twitter.
I will always call it X, just so you know.
X, okay, and that's fair. That's
fair.
fair.
I'll call Twitter.
Yeah, that's how I still refer to it as Twitter. Then I catch myself and I say X. But you're gonna see a lot of people on X right now that are, quote unquote, the main characters, the guys that are gonna raise a fuss one way or the other. To me, I'm not incredibly active on it. I have my fun on it. I like to post just like quippy little one-liner, BS, but let them do what they want to do. But like, if any of them right now are listening, the people that think they're like the main characters on Flyers Twitter, Flyers X, pump the brakes, man. Like, nothing's happened yet. It's the deadline has not happened. The moves that have been made to this point are not nearly as bad as you're making them out to be. We've actually benefited from these moves. In case your stat sheets or whatever it might be have told you otherwise, enjoy the ride. The tankers, the guys that are like, we should be losing, we're way better than we should be, and it's awesome. It is so much fun watching this team compared to these past like 3-4 years. Enjoy it. Just enjoy the ride. This is a competitive hockey team, and they're in almost every single game that they play. Cheer for them, root for them, give them your support, and just, for Christ's sake, have some fun. Like, I didn't expect this. Dave, did you expect the Flyers to be this competitive?
No, absolutely not. But I also love that you commented earlier that Canadians fans were the old man yelling at the sky. Meanwhile, you're advising Flyers fans to just be happy. So that's almost.
I'm 33. I'm not that old, right?
Just be happy, Flyers fans.
Right.
I don't know. If you were an NHL player, you'd be nearing retirement.
That's true. You get ready to hang them up.
That is true. Good point. I think I'll curb the pomp and circumstance here by just saying, listen, it's been a fun ride so far. Let's just enjoy the rest of it, see where it goes. That's that. Don't just, this might be the most vulgar I get. Just don't be a dick. That's it.
So one, I'm going to try to find some common ground here. Let's just refer to the app as the app formerly known as Twitter. I feel
there we go.
We'll just go Prince on it. We'll just go the app formerly known as Twitter, and now we all know what we're talking about. And then for my soapbox, I want to shout out anybody that's found a good dentist. I've actually been like traumatized by the dentist my whole life. I'm pretty sure that when I was like 6 years old, I had a tooth pulled. I remember it distinctly, and I cried and screamed. And my stepfather told me afterwards that like parents took their kids out of the waiting room because they heard me like crying and screaming. Like, that's what happened. And then the dentist was a new dentist. He was a young guy. Dr. Brad was his name. I remember this to this day because that was the first, last, and only time I ever saw him at that dentist office. So I'm pretty sure that experience got him to retire. And now he's like a farmer somewhere living his life where he doesn't torture children. But since that happened to me, I've been traumatized at a dentist. So I moved out to Lincoln in 2018, and I had like different dentists over the last 5 years. I would just go when the Army sent me, then I got out of the Army. So now my wife sends me. And I finally found a dentist who's really cool. They bullshit with me. They joke with me. And I had to have this like really deep cleaning yesterday that I didn't realize how much of a cleaning it was. I'm like, oh, it's just a cleaning. I thought it was a 30-minute thing. It was a 90-minute operation, basically. But they numbed me up and drugged me up so much, I didn't even know what was going on. I was watching Big Bang Theory on the ceiling and had no clue what was happening. So shout out to anybody that's found a good dentist and all the good dentists out there. There's a lot of people like me who have a hard time dealing with it. North Star Dentist in Lincoln, appreciate you. High and Wide fam, appreciate you tuning in. Check out High and Wide Radio, Pod Street Bullies, Tie My Skates, 102.9 The Game. Check out me and Dave Jackson on Behind the Stripes. Everybody have a good night.